There is speculation, of course, that it's Jon Jones.
No, it's not.
Was Jon
Ever, which I told you guys 100,000 times, was Jon Jones even remotely in my mind to fight at the White House? I wouldn't. First of all, I've told you why I wouldn't do it. And number two, some guy with meta glasses on filmed him talking about his hips, that his hips are so bad. And I don't know if you guys saw that flag football game where he can barely run. Jon Jones he retired because of his hips.
All right, so UFC 326 just wrapped up, and although Oliveira versus Holloway was a little I'd argue that the real main event was the official announcement of the White House card, and that shit is pretty mid. It's crazy how after all the buildup they've done for this event, from promising that it'll be the biggest card ever to throwing out grandiose claims that there might be up to 7 title fights that night, this is the best that they could come up with. Listen, at no point did I expect this card to even come close to how stacked UFC 300 was, but even with my very realistic expectations, this lineup is borderline laughable. I'm really not even sure what went wrong here, seeing as nearly every fighter on the roster, including Conor McGregor and Jon Jones, were begging to be on the event, but lo and behold, after months of anticipation, the end result feels pretty lackluster. Speaking of Jon Jones, many fans speculate that he was the last-minute pullout that caused Hunter Campbell to have a noticeable reaction at this past weekend's weigh-ins. Frankly, I'm not sure what to believe here, seeing as Jon had a classic Twitter meltdown after the lineup was announced, but at the same time, Dana seems adamant that the UFC never even considered him, and yeah, in this video, I'm going to be talking about all this and more. But first, very quickly, let me talk about Oliveira versus Holloway for like 30 seconds. I thought the fight was a little disappointing for sure. Mind you, both of these guys are in my top 5 favorite fighters right now, so I wasn't really rooting for either guy to win as much as I was expecting a certified banger fight of the year contender, and in that sense, I was a bit let down. It was obviously a great performance out of Charles, and this was one of the rare occasions where he decided to actually fight smart and stick to a game plan, but I can't help but feel like he could have pushed the pace a bit more, especially when the fight was on the ground. I understand that Charles has the most submission wins in UFC history, but what happened to ground and pound in MMA? I swear, it's become a relic of a bygone era. From a defensive standpoint, Max was able to survive, but watching him get manhandled on the ground only made me think how badly he would have been killed if he ended up stepping into the octagon against Khabib back at UFC 223. But to defend Max, I've seen people calling him out for only fighting strikers up to this point in his career, which isn't untrue, but the guy's maintained an 80% takedown defense throughout his entire UFC career, which is very impressive when you consider Alexander Volkanovski, for example, has a takedown defense rate of 68%. That being said, now that these bigger, stronger lightweights know that Max can be held down at 155, I'm definitely curious if there's going to be more of these types of fights to come for Holloway moving forward. Okay, let's talk about the White House card. Let me tell ya, when they first showed the full lineup during UFC 326, I literally went, It's just a bit underwhelming given the circumstances that the UFC built up for us. Now, keep in mind, I would like to consider myself a fair judge when it comes to all things, not just the UFC, so when I say that a card is mid, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm not saying it's good, I'm saying it's mediocre. Do you guys remember when all the other MMA YouTubers were shitting on UFC 300 because the main event was so-so? I wasn't one of them. I defended UFC 300 consistently because as a whole, that was clearly one of the best cards ever assembled. The UFC Freedom 250 card, however, is not a card I'm willing to die on any hill to defend. Let's take it fight by fight, starting with the main event, Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje. Honestly, I really feel like they should have tried to make Topuria versus Makhachev happen somehow, but at the same time, it's a White House card, so I agree that they kind of should have an American fighter on the main event, but it's like, how would a fight between Topuria and Makhachev even make sense right now, because Islam never wants to cut to 155 ever again, and it would be ridiculous to give Ilia an immediate title shot at 170 before defending his title at lightweight. I don't know, I guess it's kind of the only reasonable fight for Topuria right now, and admittedly, this is probably a lot more of a compelling fight for casual fans, but for us, the fans who have our fingers on the pulse of the sport, I feel like most of us agree that Ilia is going to get an easy stoppage win here. I don't want to make it seem like I'm not looking forward to the fight, both guys are exciting fighters, but when the most intriguing aspect of a fight is if one guy can pull off a stunning upset win, that doesn't really make me very hyped for it. I mean, even if, hypothetically, Paddy Pimblett was able to beat Gaethje back in January, I would still fully expect Ilia to commit murder on camera, but those guys have been beefing for years now, so we'd know that they would be talking even more shit heading into the fight, the press conference would be chaos. That's fun stuff to look forward to, even when we know the result of the fight ahead of time. Shit, man, I could say the same exact thing about Arman Tsarukyan, which I really should have used as an example before Paddy, seeing as I have no clue who would win in a fight between Ilia and Arman. With Arman, they have history, they're beefing, and their skill level is at the very least comparable. And you know what? Now that I think about it, I think the reason why it's so hard for me to feel very excited about this fight is because Justin doesn't deserve this title shot. Arman has a longer win streak and a win over Charles Oliveira, who has a win over Justin. Moreover, Charles now has a win over Max Holloway, who also has a win over Justin. It absolutely should be Arman or Charles fighting Ilia at the White House, but instead we have Justin in this position because the UFC made a bad bet thinking that Paddy would beat Justin for the interim title. Not saying that Justin has no chance at beating Ilia, it's MMA after all, but in almost all normal circumstances, Topuria knocks him out. Shit, man, not even Ilia's excited about fighting Justin.
If it were up to you...
So I'm gonna give you the 3 fights that
I mean, I know
would
it.
like to.
Justin, Islam, and I mean in Armand, right?
Actually, I don't want to fight with Justin because it's like.
Okay, so who's your 3? Sorry.
Okay, will be Islam,
Okay.
Connor, and
Jon
Patty.
Jones. I'm
Patty,
kidding.
bro.
Patty?
Patty.
Bro.
I would love it. Like,
Oh boy, now let's talk about the co-main. I don't know how he does it, but Ciryl Gane's infinite title shot glitch continues. To be fair, the heavyweight division is in a terrible state right now, and there's really nobody else who deserves it, but good lord, this guy keeps failing upwards. That being said, you cannot convince me that this is what the UFC wanted. You cannot tell me that the end goal for the UFC matchmakers was to have Alex Pereira fighting Ciryl Gane as the co-main event at the White House. Alex is the biggest star that the UFC has right now, and both he and Jon Jones have been saying for months that they want to fight each other. There is no way that this was the ideal way they wanted to utilize their marquee fighter on a marquee event such as this. Pereira versus Gane is a good fight. It's probably the highest level striking we've ever seen at heavyweight, but holy shit if this isn't yet another case of Alex saving the UFC's asses yet again. Now, in case you missed it, during the UFC 326 weigh-ins, you can clearly see Hunter Campbell telling some of the other executives that somebody pulled out of the card.
What do you got? It says tell one name. I'll tell you guys something about the White House fight. So we've been working on this thing nonstop, and one of the fights literally just fell out when I walked in here. I don't see. I think Hunter killed himself. I don't know. One of the fights fell off tonight. Brutal.
Important context here is that one day before this, rumors began to circulate that Alex Pereira versus Jon Jones was a done deal for the White House, and given the inherently strange nature of Pereira versus Gane, many people strongly suspect that Jon might have been the fighter that backed out. Amidst all these speculations, Dana had this to say.
And what was even crazier is Jon Jones came out and was like, I'm in negotiations right now for the White House fight, after I had already sent a text to his lawyer saying, never gonna happen ever.
Is it fair to say then Jon Jones is retired and this is the end of his time?
Yes.
This is where things get interesting, because immediately following the White House card announcement, Jon took to Twitter and went on an emotional tweet storm where in one post he says, so all this negotiating was complete bullshit. Is that what you want me to agree to publicly? I feel like this is kind of inconsistent with what Dana was saying about the situation. On one side, we have Dana saying that the UFC kind of stonewalled Jon when he reached out to them, but Jon himself claims that there was a long series of negotiations that took place, so what's the truth?
And I can tell you they did talk to Jon Jones. I told you this before he told us, and then he told us. And I know they spoke, and they just couldn't come to terms. That's what I was told. Now, it wasn't the 30 million, but it was a big number, and they couldn't come to terms. They wanted Pereira versus Jon Jones. There's no doubt about that. But as I was hearing all week long, there was skepticism that this fight could get done. There was massive skepticism. And I also know that Topuria versus Gaethje happened rather quickly as well.
Okay, this makes a lot more sense to me. I can absolutely see Jon yet again for a third time pricing himself out of a fight, whether intentionally or unintentionally. I can also see Jon trying to overplay his hand yet again, and the UFC, after learning from their mistakes when they tried to set him up against Ngannou and Aspinall, said fuck it and settled on Ciryl Gane. I want to make it clear, I'm happy with Jon Jones not being on the card. After all the shit he's pulled the last 3 years, he absolutely does not deserve to get what he wants how he wants it. I'm not in the business of telling you what to think, but at least for me, Jon's burnt up any semblance of goodwill, and he's done too many people dirty to have the UFC bend over backwards to his demands. And nobody knows if he demanded $3 million, $30 million, or $300 million to fight Pereira, but I don't blame the UFC in the slightest for not feeling confident in him. And now that it's essentially guaranteed that Jon Jones is officially retired, to him I say good riddance.
This morning, Jon Jones went on a bit of a Twitter tirade, and then he ended up deleting them. Have you seen his comments?
No.
Or he basically very heavily pushed back on you, saying that there were no negotiations. And then
I never said there were no negotiations. I never said that. I said, were they talking to Jon Jones? They talked to everybody. Everybody was talked to. Not one word of what I said was not true about the whole Jon Jones thing.
And all the other fights on the card are just so uninteresting to me, and they reek of favoritism. Instead of having Sean O'Malley fight Corey Sandhagen, which everybody has been begging for years, they set him up against Ayman Zahabi, who's a ridiculously favorable matchup for Sean. Mauricio Hufi versus Michael Chandler is a fun fight, but it's a classic example of a veteran being set up as a sacrificial lamb. Bo Nickel versus Kyle Dawkins is so dumb and feels like the Cody Brundage fight all over again. Also, having Diego Lopez opening up the card ahead of Bo is a huge slap in the face to Lopez. I don't know, man. The more I think about it, the more I realize that this card is just a mess. Look, is it a bad card? No, not really. I'd actually even say that for modern UFC standards, it is pretty good, but this is not the level of quality that we were led to believe it would be. We did not ask for this card. We are more or less being force-fed this event, and to help us accept it, they made promises that it would be the biggest card ever, and it's just simply not that. And then when you hear about how they originally planned to have Conor McGregor on the card, but then they pushed him back to July, like, the shit just doesn't make sense. Oh, but the card hasn't even happened yet. It might be the best event ever. That's not the point. We were told that this would be the biggest card of all time, and it once again turned out to be yet another bald-faced lie. Anyways, that's the video for today. Definitely let me know your thoughts on the UFC White House card. Who do you think is the fighter that actually pulled out? As always, if you like the video, then like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
There's a lot of reporting out of Spain today saying that it was going to be Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev, and that fight fell apart
That's
on
not true.
Friday. Well, Justin Gaethje also said like he was told Thursday he wasn't on the card, and then on Friday he was.
That is true.
So what happened with Islam, I guess, because you know how fans are, a lot of them.
That's
now
not true,
thinking-
I said.
Sure. So
It was never Islam versus
Ilia.
Topuria, yeah.
So anyone who thinks Islam ducked this fight or anything like that,
Yeah.
it's all incorrect.
Don't worry about what fights are being made. We announce which ones are made and which ones will be happening.